Are there any questions you might want to ask? And even if you're too shy to do that on the microphone, you can use the chat to do so. Or is that clear? Do you know what we're doing here now? Is that a moment where you want to go into the breakout and find questions, or are you good? Is everyone good? Right. Okay. So then we talk a little bit about entrepreneurship. That came up several times. I will talk in general terms, but I'd like you to, while I'm doing that, to put some thoughts into the chat, questions, additional questions, etc., that I can then incorporate into what I'm saying, what I'm talking about. Does that make sense? Yeah. Okay. So, do you remember the time when you couldn't switch on the light because there was no electricity? Of course not, right? Because it's been around for the last 150 or so years. But before that, there were some people who decided that they wanted to put one light bulb in every house. Does that sound familiar? Or something similar being said in the 80s and 90s by one guy, one computer on every desk. That was Bill Gates. Has that changed the world? Radically, right? Radically. There was one guy who decided he's going to do the shop for everything, who's never bought anything on Amazon in this space here. Anybody? Two. Okay. But you're aware of Amazon. It's a deliberate choice not to. Okay. But it has definitely changed the world massively. So, in a nutshell, that's what entrepreneurship is about. You see something that needs changing in the world in your perspective, and then you go and do that. That's what it is. It's very simple. So why, and I just want to make a distinction briefly between entrepreneurship and management, right? Entrepreneurship is the part in which you establish something. It's like going through the knowledge funnel by, I think the guy's called George Martin or something. So essentially, you've if you've played with Lego, and we already established that all of you have played with Lego at one point in your life. Um, yeah, you open the box and there's this big box with hundreds or thousands of pieces of Lego. Okay, or really juicy. Now you want to build something. You come up with an idea of what to build. But how is that going to emerge out of that box? Right? No idea. You're going to start experimenting. You're going to start playing with that. That's called the mystic phase. And then you see, after a while of experimentation, you see that some patterns start emerging that actually look like, somewhat like, in the direction of the thing you want to build or parts of the thing you want to build. It starts to work. That's the heuristics phase. We've established heuristics that um, are somehow working, but you cannot really explain why. Once you understand why and how it all fits together and how it's done concretely, and you can come up with a plan, with a recipe, with an algorithm, you reach the algorithmic phase. Okay. You can apply that to many, many things, but you can definitely apply that to solving a problem in the world by means of an organization. Okay. The first guy trying to find out how to put a light bulb in every house had to play around with many difficult problems. Where does the energy come from? How does the energy go to every house? How does the energy go into the light bulb? How do we distribute those light bulbs? All of these things had to be clarified. And then they had to be streamlined, put into processes that could be repeated easily without him. Because he has to bring other people into the picture so that he can scale this up. He cannot put a light bulb into every house by himself or herself. Okay. So once you're at the point of the algorithmic phase, you have your solution, it's repeatable, you can now put an organization around that. And that organization has an entirely different set of requirements than the path towards that organization. The path through the mystic and the heuristics phase into the algorithmic phase is the entrepreneurial path. The path of making sure that organization actually fulfills its job, follows the recipes, performs the algorithm, optimizes the algorithm, incremental innovation horizon one stuff. That's the stuff that management does. Okay? Completely different beasts, not even related. Okay. Now, now the activist part, right? I think that's important to address. I can stop this share now, I think. So, um, just trying to find the chat again here. Okay. So the activist part. There's a really, really good essay by Nick Bostrom called The Vulnerable World Hypothesis. Nick Bostrom is um, natural scientist. I don't know what exact field, but he's very concerned about AI and stuff. So he's written some really interesting books on that. The Vulnerable World Hypothesis is a way to think about scientific discoveries. So he opens this picture of there's a bucket, and in that bucket you find the scientific insights, but you don't know what you're gonna get, right? And you pull balls out of the thing, and you can pull white balls, gray balls, and black balls. Gray balls can be used for good and bad things, and they don't have the absolute capacity to destroy everything. Thank you, X, for posting the link in the chat. Um, and the white balls have absolute positive effects, only positive effects. And the black balls have absolute devastating extinction level negative effects. And we don't know what we're getting, right? So far, we've somehow never pulled out a black. Maybe. We don't know that, but maybe, right? Hopefully. But how are we going to prevent that? Now, the only way to attempt to prevent that, even then you cannot be sure, but attempt to prevent that is to create some boundaries and some filters. You consciously create ways in which you're limiting the freedom of scientific endeavor. You say, not everything goes, not anything goes, because it might be dangerous. There are some things that are off limits and we just don't do them. It's a whole different discussion whether that's even possible. But the point is, going back to the entrepreneurs, I know many financially successful entrepreneurs who see something in the world that needs to be done, in their opinion, or could be done, or is an opportunity, and they seize it, and they become filthy rich. But it's, let's say, dark gray. Okay, it's exploiting somewhere. It's not doing something good. But they don't really care because they're still great entrepreneurs, and they can measure that the by their net worth. Okay, so an entrepreneurial activist uses the power of entrepreneurship, of changing the world, that putting actual dents in the world towards a very conscious end, trying to get the white balls, not the black or the gray, trying to get the white balls. All right? Does that make sense? Okay. So let's spend some more minutes on some additional questions you have around entrepreneurship in general. I think there were some more in the chat. Maybe now's the time to unmute yourself and ask these questions so we can go a little bit deeper before we take a break. Oh, who's going first?
The I really like the example of the balls. Would you? It's not a direct question upon like entrepreneurship,
Hmm.
what you asked, but like for the for those gray balls,
Hmm.
that just entrepreneurship. Would that be like um, how Amazon treats its workers, how they're getting such low pay and bad working hours and everything? Would that be like an example of those uh, not being an entrepreneurial activist?
Amazon in general, you mean? Of being just a general entrepreneur, but not an entrepreneurial activist?
Yeah, just in
Yeah,
relation to those like gray balls and white balls.
I would say so for sure. You
Yeah.
could you could do enormous great in the position of Amazon. You could turn it more towards white, but it's squarely in the gray, maybe even on the darkish side. I don't know. That depends on the whole picture, but yeah, that's something for sure, right? I mean, one example that makes it maybe clearer. Who here is familiar with couch surfing? Yeah, so couch surfing versus Airbnb, right? You're doing the same thing essentially, but for a very different reason. And the origin story of Airbnb tells a different story, of course. Um, they want to bring people together and all of that, but effectively, it's about money. Yeah, that's why I ended yesterday in the meaning in life thing, right? Um, I know many entrepreneurs who come out of a dark gray endeavor and really discovered that they're lacking that they need meaning in life, and all of the wealth they have accumulated maybe is worth nothing, because financial capital wealth is worth nothing if you don't have the other forms of capital.
Do you have like more examples of startups that started doing good and then like kind of ended up being bad? And is it possible for like companies to go from white balls to dark balls and back to white again?
Hmm. Okay. So I would argue that any startup or any company, for that matter, that um, is in a business of returning profits to somebody and is in a competition with others is forced to move to the gray side. There's no other way, right? So if just one second, Thomas. If it is mm, the tragedy of the commons. You familiar with that term? Some? Okay. That is basically what the tragedy of the commons talks about. So um, imagine there's a lake, and the lake has a fish population and a number of fishermen, and the fishermen are keeping the fish population at a certain level so everybody can thrive. And for some reason, might be external or internal, one of these fishermen wants to thrive a little bit more than the others and starts taking out more fish than is good. So the others start noticing that the fish population is going down more than it should. And so their reaction is to get as much fish out as possible for themselves to accumulate enough buffer, enough financial capital, so that they can somehow buffer hard times. Thank you for putting that in the chat. Could you also put that in the WhatsApp? I think that's more doable. This chat is ephemeral here. It's great. um, so so in other words, if you are in the business of, well, literally anything, if you are, if somebody in your competition is going into exploitation mode and starting to be more ruthless than you, that'll be reflected in profit. So if you exploit your workers more, you have to pay less per hour, meaning you will have more profit than your competition. And if the competition doesn't follow, if the competition doesn't do that, at one point their position will be eroded and they will be bought out of the picture or just die. So they will have to find other ways of creating the same amount of profit. And once you've optimized everything that you can possibly optimize without exploitation, that game still continues and you will start exploiting whether you want it or not, as long as you're in the competitive game, right? So the only place where you don't have to do that is where you don't have competition. Amazon doesn't have competition. um, they still do it because they don't want to keep it that way. They want to make sure that they don't have competition, and they also want to make sure that they don't have competition in other fields they enter, or that they buy the competition out. And Jeff Bezos is not really used to that situation. This is why he has so much trouble between Blue Origin and SpaceX. Right? He cannot deal with that type of. He doesn't know how to do that. Okay. Now the other part of your question um, was around how to avoid it or how to go back. I think ultimately the profit-seeking organization cannot go back. You have to find different modes of organizing. You have to find modes in which um, the profit is tied to the stakeholders, not to the shareholders. Now, in the example of the fish should be stakeholders too. So there should be a representative for the fish, so they can take part in this. But that's a regulatory thing or a very local thing. You can have one lake, you can free one lake and say, okay, this is how this lake is happening. We are a cooperative. This is how we do this. We own this lake. Nobody can change this. You can set up the governance around the lake. Okay. As long as it's in the public space or in a more unbounded system, like the global economy, that's much harder. You need international organizations, nation states, setting the boundaries for stuff like that. Or you go into nonprofit. Right? That does not mean nonprofit is a really, really bad term. It does not mean you cannot make profit. It's just that you cannot take profit out. You can be a highly, highly profitable organization, but you cannot take the profit out. No one entity or person will benefit from this. Yeah. Yeah, and it's an interesting question in the chat. Where does the regulatory actually play their role? What is the role of the regulation, of the administration, of the politics? Well, we give them that role, but what if their game is broken and we cannot really give some representative role? Interesting. Okay, I hope that sheds some light on this. It's break time. Do you want to have a break or should we let Thomas go?
It's fine. I wasn't gonna add much. It was just that, and then we can have a break. I was just gonna add that I feel like whenever a company that seems like it's a good company goes public and are then dependent on shareholders and enter that world of ever uh, always trying to get the more gains and so on and better quarterly results, I feel like they always move into a gray or darker territory because of how the state of the economy is.
exactly. And if you, but we'll go into a break now. See you in 8 minutes. And then gonna go into that question that's in the chat, and then we start moving towards your projects. Okay. So there's a question in the chat. I don't know, put it there. Around, let's read if I can get to it somehow. Where that interface. So, what do you see as the role of the state in the emerging regenerative economy? And do you think the direction governments should be aiming going in different parts of the world? So, where does money come from?
The
Anybody?
bank.
Yeah. Where does the bank get it from?
Didn't we agree that money was an illusion some days ago?
Yeah, they create it.
Exactly. They create it out of thin air. Okay. So, and they create enough of it so that the money supply globally, M3, counting all of the money, doubles every roughly 20 years. And we also agreed that a doubling in a set time frame is an exponential growth curve. So in other words, money supply globally goes like this. Okay. We also found that it is backed by GDP. When did that happen and why? Anybody? So last time I asked that question, Alim had a good pointer towards gold, right? But because gold doesn't grow exponentially in our grounds, we couldn't satisfy that exponential growth curve of money with gold anymore. That point became apparent in the early 70s. So Nixon, who was US president at that point, more than 50 years ago, changed the backing mechanism of the dollar from gold to GDP. The argument was that we will endlessly innovate. We will endlessly be productive. People will always be productive. So we can base our increase in productivity on the money in the increase in productivity. Okay, that happened. Now, our GDP, therefore, has to grow roughly at the same rate as our money supply. This is why we would like to see something like a GDP growth of 2 to 3% per year. Right? That's the reason why everybody talks about the 2 to 3%. That's the reason. Now, how do you measure GDP? Anyone?
It's the sum of all the value created in a nation within a year.
There's many ways of measuring that. We could, in a very abstract way, say that we count all of the atoms and bits we push around in that economy in a year. Okay. Some atoms turn into food, some turn into houses, some turn into whatever. We use bits to organize all of that. Great. Okay. So the moving of atoms and bits and the reconfiguration of atoms requires energy. There's no way around that. So, and as a result, our energy need also increases exponentially. How many barrels of oil equivalents of fossil fuel do we burn every year as humanity? Any ideas? No? Okay, hold on to something. 100 billion. 100 billion. How much energy is in one of these barrels? Any ideas? Okay. Let's say you take the energy of 1 barrel of oil and you put it into your car. And let's say that takes you from roughly where you are to Spain. Okay, so that takes a couple of days. That's the energy that was in that barrel of oil. Okay, now push the car back. How long will that take? That'll take 5 years. The 1 barrel of oil contains the equivalent of a human work energy of 5 years. Okay. So now we have 5 years of human labor work equivalent in 1 barrel of oil. We're burning 100 billion of those, meaning we have a shadow slave population and energy slaves of 500 billion people equivalents. Okay. Now let's say we're running out of the possibility for fossil fuel. Because it's simply running out at one point, but also because we cannot use it anymore because we're fucking up the climate. What are we going to do? Oh, we're going to replace it with something. Are we going to replace it with? Thoughts? Anybody?
Yeah, solar, wind.
Yeah. Ali.
I believe 19th, not like at the beginning of 18th century or 16th century, people generally providing their like lights in the houses with whale oil, generally. And until the like discovery of the oil, they just continued to use this. But they were never aware of this oil thing. And then they realized this, and then now we are producing most of our energy requirements from the oil reserves.
Right.
And what I believe, if I will go back to 16th century and I will ask to someone, okay, can we get some oil from the like ground? It will be like, you might be hanged, like, or just go to prison because of like that kind of crazy ideas. But I believe there will be something which we don't know, like because of our technology yet. And there will be like massive resources which might be reachable because of the technology or the discovery which will be found in the future, maybe in 50 years. And until then, I believe it's not so easy to understand or discover or imagine that kind of a thing. Maybe Elon Musk will find it in Mars, and then they will try to get it to Earth. it might be so valuable. But actually, in my mind, it might be so close to our place. I mean, to us, but because of the vision and like possibility, I believe we don't see that yet.
Okay, there's a possibility that we find that silver bullet. Yes, it could come in the form of finally fusion, maybe. It could come in the form of geothermal if we can drill through tectonic plates with um, plasma drills. It's becoming feasible as well. We could retrofit coal power plants and stuff like that with geothermal anywhere in the world. That would be great. It could come from solar in outer space, sent back to Earth via laser. People are working on that stuff. It's becoming feasible right now. Yeah, so there are some ideas. It's a very thin edge that we're moving on, and it's very short because we will at one point inevitably run out of the energy, and we will need excess energy to rebuild the infrastructure such that it can be run on these forms of energy. Okay, if everything has to run on electricity, we require a lot of atoms that we have to configure using energy, and we have to take them out for grounds and etc. To create the grids that actually can manage this, right? So it's a very very short runway, and it's very narrow, and it's a possibility, but let's say it's at 50-50, right? We can or we cannot, and what makes it harder is that for the current technologies like solar, like wind, and all of these, we simply don't have enough minerals on this planet. We don't. This is why people are starting to debate mining moon. Right? So that we can take those minerals from the moon if we need. But it's simply impossible right now. So a regenerative economy model solves this, right? In some way or the other. We could also say, well, you know what? Actually, we have enough cars now. We can stop building them. Actually, we also have enough ships now. We can stop building them, and planes, and all of the rest. We can change our building code and start building houses that are actually sustainable. Stop using concrete, start using clay again, which is so much better and creates so much better living conditions than concrete. All of that, it's there. The possibilities are there and endless. A regenerative economy takes that into account. Now, the problem here is that we have gotten used to, as a society, to measure our wealth with money, which is dependent on GDP. And we're telling our administration, our politics, that they should take care of that. Our politics is trapped in a short-term marketing cycle of in Western democracies, 4 to 5 years, where they have to make sure they are elected or re-elected again. That is not a great environment for talking about the hard things that might take a little longer than 5 years. Right? If you need a transition like that, it takes 20, 30 years. How can you have that conversation where you will be thrown out of the driver's seat in the next couple of years if you start talking about hard stuff? You're not. That's called a multipolar trap. Now, the economy we also already established is also trapped in a multipolar trap that could be called the tragedy of the commons. in the current model, they have to exploit so that they can survive as individual players. That is where our model comes from, the model of the current economic model. Now, all of that happens on a national level, but all of that also happens on the international level. If you look at the international ranking of nation states through GDP, the US are in number 1 position, and Costa Rica is roughly number 80. If you use the Happy Planet Index, and I said that last week already, do you remember what happens? They flip, right? The little completely irrelevant country of Costa Rica becomes number 1 of the world, and the US dropped down to 80. Can you imagine an American politician advocating for that? No, you can't, right? It would be absolute suicide. So the ones that are successful in the GDP race have also accumulated a lot of power over the economic world and keeping that in place. That is another multipolar trap on an international level. Very fucking hard to get out of that on any level. So the only way I see this happening is by society getting up, talking about what actually constitutes a good life, what is the wealth, how do we want to live, and then giving their politicians the job to create the environment that is conducive to creating that kind of wealth. Tell them we are going to measure you by that, and we are going to hold you accountable by that. That's the only way I see at the moment. Might be wrong, but that's the only way I see. Okay. Anything you would like to add or go deeper on? If not, then we will start playing with your project profiles. Nope. Okay. All right. So step 1 will be, I will now create 3 rooms here. And I want you to assemble in those rooms, and also please all 3 teams assemble in those rooms. Like yesterday, one team stayed here, so please all go into those rooms. And what I want you to come back with after 15 minutes is the first proposal for your project, plus a name for your group. I'm saying first, right? What's the essence of what I've been talking about yesterday and also before? What's the essence? How many times did you try to walk before you could walk? 400 times exactly. So take the first step. And to use the name escapes me now. Friedman, no, something like that. Friedman, whatever. Reid Hoffman. Reid Hoffman, that's it. Reid Hoffman, founder of LinkedIn, part of the PayPal mafia. Um, he is on the record saying, if you aren't embarrassed of your first version, you weren't going fast enough. A former business partner of mine used to say, if you think you're in control, you're not going fast enough. Okay? So take that in mind. I don't care if your first version is a rabbit. It can be anything, but so you have to start somewhere. Okay? So in 15 minutes, that's so let's say in 15 past the hour, we'll be back here. I want to hear a pitch from each of your groups and a name. There you go. Now it's a bit hard. Now you have to rename yourselves, I think. Alim, Ina, do you know which group you want to go in? I'm not hearing you. You're muted.
Yeah, the same.
We
Okay.
have to choose
Number three. Number
You have to
three.
go into one of those 3 rooms, yes.
How do we do that? There.
You click on the breakout room logo icon on the bottom, and then you
Okay.
join one of the groups. I
Yes.
don't know which of which. Oh man, how are you? You're muted. First of all, you're muted.
I'm going to Berlin soon to have fun.
Ah, that's nice. What are you going to do there?
Be with really, really good guys. How is our friend Florian doing?
I have no idea really. I think he's in his standard mode, standard Florian mode. I'm going to stop the recording, by the way. I'm going to resume the recording. And what I want to hear and what we all want to hear is how do you call yourself as a team? And what is your project about?
Okay, should we start?
Sure.
Yeah. Well, we are missing Sophia Kraft, by the way, but we're a team of 4, and we don't have like a name for the team or the group.
Yeah, we made a project name. Okay, so can we introduce the project first, and then the name will make sense?
Yeah.
Yeah.
And also the house first. Yeah.
Yeah. So what we want to do is create like a project house or like a creative collective, where we will have a lot of projects that have to do a lot with women's health, mental health, improving people's lives, I guess. And the first project we want to start off with is creating creating porn magazine for women, because there are no such things in Norway, at least. And in this magazine, it's not like a porn magazine, or not just porn magazine. That's more for like the scandalous factor. But focusing a lot on women's health, sexual education, because like nowadays most people, young people, learn about sex through porn, like the porn industry, and it's not necessarily a good way for young people to learn that. So having like a sex education sort of women's health porn magazine for women. Yeah, that's and the current name, which we haven't landed on, is avkledd, which means undressed in Norwegian. Yeah.
Mm-hmm. Okay.
Yeah.
Other teams, you have to pay very close attention to what the other teams say, right? Because the next round will include for you to respond to that. Okay, so you have to really know what the others are doing. Okay, are there any questions you have to the team that helps clarify something that is in your mind right now, or are you good? Have you understood what that team does? I haven't understood the name. I cannot even begin to pronounce it. Maybe you can write it in the chat.
Yeah. Undressed in English. I can write it in the chat.
Okay. Write it in the chat, and if I think I cannot say it, then I will call you undressed.
Okay.
Okay.
I think I think our main like issue or what we're trying to figure out now is how to because there are a lot of elements in it, but mostly like how can we actually make money on this? Like is it through merch? Is it through like collaborations with people? Like how can this sort of earn its place in the world and make money? Yeah.
Okay. Okay. I'm going to leave everything uncommented at this point. You will receive comments later. Other teams, do you have any questions? Anything you would like to know now? From, how do you say it? Avkledd.
Avkledd.
Avkledd. Okay.
Good.
Cool. All right. Who's next?
We can go.
Okay.
So we have a name for our group, actually. I think it started as a bit of a inside joke between me and Aline, because we're both Tolkien fans. So we've just ended up calling it ourselves Team Fellowship.
Okay, and you're in room 3? You were in room 3?
Yeah, room 3.
Okay, good.
Right, we don't have a very specific project yet, but we're working within certain parameters, sustainability, regenerative direction, impact in Oslo, the community here. And we've sort of been thinking about what it could mean to have a regenerative Oslo. What kind of aspects within that we could work on. We have more specific ideas, but we also want to keep it a bit open for discussion. And we still have yet to do a thorough workshop on this within our group.
So just one question for me to understand this better. What's the difference for you between sustainability and regeneration?
Basically, that we put in more than we take out.
Okay. Can you and everybody on your team elaborate a little bit more on where your thoughts are when you say sustainable regenerative Oslo, to give all of us, also the other teams, something to work on, to think about. We need some more surface area.
Okay.
One thing that we talked about was that this project is to make Oslo better for the people that live in it. So it has this kind of people perspective. Yeah.
Okay. What else?
Right. For instance, like topics that we have touched upon is like regenerative farming within the city. What could that look like? How could like clean water project, is that something we could take part in? Yesterday we were at a seminar with Awake. They're currently at Epicenter in Oslo, and they're this sustainable communication bureau that assists organizations and businesses in becoming like having a more inner focus and like creating a profile and brand that is like shows their and makes it more transparent in what ways they are sustainable. And they spoke of these values or called the inner sustainability goals, and I think we were a bit inspired by that aspect, like how in every way, if you work from the human inner side, how could you transform a city to become regenerative in every way?
Alim, do you want to add your take? Yeah.
Yeah, it's in close future, there's high possibility for Oslo to be built up with the high concrete blocks, because like there's an area which is Jernbanetorget. It's the central station, and they build really high apartments and buildings there, and then it looks like really modern now, and people like it. And now, but there are many cities in Europe like which is built with the high concrete blocks and the buildings, and there if there will not be a solution in close future, the Oslo also will turn to a city which is like only big consist of big buildings like concrete blocks. Yeah, city needs something like this.
Okay. Cool. Thank you. So I hope you other teams listened to all of that properly. Let's go to the final team. Who's that?
So it's me and Fatma. Emilia Nina is not here today. So our name is Fang. It's everyone's initials.
Fang.
Fang. I can write it down.
Like Fang.
Yes. No, E. Yeah, Feng. But Fatma is going to write it down in the chat.
Okay. Fang. Okay.
Yes. And for the project, we've been talking about different stuff, sprucing up offices, like boring offices, making it a bit more fun and good to work in. But what we were talking about now was a playground for young adults. So it's a place where you can teach or have more fun, and maybe a combination with food, like cheaper food. Yeah, basically that. But we've been talking about mostly like a humanitarian and combination of making a change in the system. So get to the root problem before it even breaks out to become a problem. Yeah, changing the systems. So how to combine those two, like being physical and do humanitarian work as well as changing it before it even gets to be a problem.
Okay. Fatma, do you want to add something?
No, not really. I think she has said that the team is still a bit confused which direction we should go. We should go. Yeah. So like it's humanitarian or changing the system. So we're trying to combine those two.
Okay. All right. Do you know that a story that goes around that Elon sometimes tells when he revealed to his friends that he was going to build a rocket company? Anybody? Do you know that? They gave him a compilation of exploding rockets, failed rocket starts. Because he said it was the dumbest idea ever to do this. And made him watch it. Hours of exploding rockets to show him this is where your money is going to go. It's going to just evaporate. Well, you proved him wrong, right? What's one of the most common mistakes early founders do with their new idea?
Can I just guess?
Sorry?
Can I just guess?
Yeah, of course. I'll go ahead.
Trying to conform to the established system instead of trying to make a new system.
In a way, yeah. So they're asked the wrong people whether they like the idea, right? Your mother will not tell you what is stupid about your idea. Okay? Never. Your friends should tell you, but probably won't. Because they also want to encourage you, because they're nice people. And you're nice. Okay? Do you remember the hero's journey? What's at the bottom?
You mean the end or the bottom in the
The
middle?
bottom. The bottom.
Moment of change.
The abyss. The place where everything goes to hell, where everything is shredded apart. You lose hope. You think you're not going to survive. Okay? I cannot promise you that this is the first experience of abyss in our journey, but this is definitely the last, but this is definitely the first. Okay? So the next exercise is you go back into your rooms and you have 5 minutes for each of the other two groups. Okay, so you have 10 minutes in total to shred apart their idea completely. Tell them in realistic terms why this is utter fucking bullshit. And they should not waste one more second on this. Okay? And be serious about this. Because I can see so many holes in all of those projects. Okay? Okay, rooms are open. See you back here at 45.
Yes.
They didn't expect that.
No, I saw it on their faces. And actually, one of them looked like this will be fun. I had one thing I was thinking of throwing in today, but I thought I will not. What is your best take on how to get literacy fast? How do you structure to get information fast? Because you've done it, I see what you've been doing. It worked really, really good. But if you should make a recipe of what you've basically been doing, and is there anything relevant for them here? Because the thing is that they are institution children, right?
Mm.
They've been brought up in institutions that have not learned how to think by themselves.
Mm. Well, I think one recipe could be that you're become brutally honest about whether you really know something. So we say things and we take them as truths because
But I
we've heard them
tried,
somewhere.
yeah, I tried to, what you've basically been doing systematically is that all the beliefs that your language consists of, you try to find the exact information, right?
Exactly. That's it. And you write it down. You really explore that yourself. You do the math yourself.
Yeah, you categorize things. You see, when I talk about economy, where does it come from?
Mhm.
What is it about? And
What
you
is it
create
actually? Yeah.
so you create, instead of this symbolic, superficial language, you get exact language at the bottom, right?
Exactly. It's thinking from first principles or identifying generator functions, something like that. And that's
Yeah.
hard work. And nobody can take that, nobody can give that to you, right? You cannot. I can talk about these things for the rest of my life, and but they will not get it unless they do the thinking for themselves. So get out of simulation of simulated thinking into real thinking. That's the
Yeah.
core.
And whenever you have a conversation like this, you have to go into doing the job afterwards to look into the articles and the quotes and say, okay, what is the definitions of these things? So because else you will lose it again, right?
Yeah.
You have to read about 4 ways of knowing and all of these things, because else it will 1 week and it's gone.
Mhm. And maybe even establish your own language.
Yeah, at least your way of describing it.
Yeah, at least, yeah.
So
And then
it's getting as most languages, you pick somebody from somebody else and you toss around with things that you really do not know what is all about.
Mhm.
And then you live in this mist of not exactness on anything.
Yeah, one exercise one could do is have ChatGPT generate a list of 52 words, concepts that come up often, or something like that. And then once per week, write and publish an article about your thoughts on this. So, love, art, transport, things like that.
Or one article a week about what is the most important things I'd like to really have an in-depth understanding of.
But instead of talking about what you would like to understand something,
Yeah.
because they're all connected. So, what I did years ago was I came up with a list like that, 52 things, and I wrote a blog post once a week, and I did that for 2 years in a row to see how my perception and my definition and my understanding of each of these things changed over time.
And I saw it when we talked about the 7 answers. So you start with definitions, right? Before you elaborate.
Well, you have to. Yeah. That's where the thinking starts.
So unless you get the building blocks of thinking exact, it will be speculation.
Mm-hmm. Exactly. Just fantasy, speculation.
But how many percent of the world's conversations do you think happens in speculation mode?
All conversation, 98%.
Which means that maybe one of the biggest cause to world literacy is that we speculate all the time. There's no substance, right?
Mhm.
That's a nice insight.
Are you scared already?
Huh?
Are you scared?
No.
No?
I mean, I think we're the ones that are gonna get the most out of this, as our sort of project is the most
Defined.
sort of precise or thought through.
Yeah.
Because we had some problems with theirs because it's not one it's like a theme or yeah.
Well, it's your first criticism, right?
Yeah.
Yeah, 100%.
Hi, Feng. Are you scared?
You should be.
Okay. So we have 15 minutes left now, and we take 5 minutes to shred each of you. Okay. And I'm just gonna go in the order of the list here in the breakout room. So we start with Feng. So please unmute yourselves and take Avkled and Fellowship apart.
Will you start that? Okay. Okay. So Avklad, it already exists. Nobody reads paper anymore. So maybe you should do it online. And there's something called Oh My God, Yes, that basically does the same. And for this to work, you need to make it to become a trend, which is very hard. And your name is kind of what is it called? I can't remember the name. So yeah, doesn't really explain what you're actually doing. It's so much more than that, basically. But that's just a good thing, I guess. Yeah.
Yeah, the only thing I can add on that is that it might give the wrong impression, that it lead in the wrong direction. Yeah, on that. True result. Thank you. Yeah, that's it. The next one.
The fellowship, you didn't give us any specific, so it could go very wrong. It depends on what you're gonna choose. But you mentioned something about clean water, and I think there's bigger problems than worrying about clean water in Norway. So yeah, something more.
Yeah,
this was really hard. I got it.
So yeah, it was hard to shred that one.
Especially the first one, the Avklad, because I would really like to work on that one.
Okay.
Yeah.
Fair enough. Okay, so then we give Avkled opportunity to respond to Feng and Fellowship. Go ahead.
Okay.
Take them apart.
Our idea is great. We stand up for women's rights, health, and give them a sparkling.
Don't defend your idea. Take them apart. Just take them apart. You just,
Oh, we're taking them apart.
Oh,
you take them apart. Yeah,
okay.
we don't have
I
so
thought
much
you
time.
meant
You
that we were
just
supposed to
go in
finally,
and kill them.
finally. Okay, let's kill them. Which we talking about fellowship?
Feng first?
Sorry.
Both.
Okay, Feng first.
Yeah.
Okay. Your idea isn't even an idea. It's just themes. So it was very difficult to actually pick this one apart because it's already apart.
Ooh.
Rose.
Hey, you said shreds. Playground for adults. I mean, in combination with food. So I'm assuming you want to serve food. But there's already like huge competition for cool places where you can have fun and serve food. Like people go to bars all the time. That's the playground for adults. That's where we have fun. So I'm not seeing how that makes you like what's unique about it. Yeah. And I didn't really catch the part about changing the system. Because which I didn't understand which system it was that needed changing, so can't really comment on that. Just come on, Ruben.
Yeah, no, you're doing good. Like, like you took all the big spots.
Yeah, sorry.
And we can go on rant all the day long.
Yeah, fellowship.
Yeah,
that's absolutely nothing. Yeah,
so we're wondering how are you going to make money on farm living in Oslo when the farmers barely survive in Norway?
And also, if you want to do it in Oslo, like that's the most expensive place to actually acquire real estate to farm.
Yeah, and we already have really clean and great water in both Oslo and Norway. So what clean water project were you thinking about? In Norway or another country?
Yeah, and these are like hugely complex problems, and who are you to create solution for these complex problems? And there's so many good smart people and they haven't achieved it. Why should you achieve it? Be able to achieve it?
Yeah.
I'm so sorry. Oh, that's the shred.
It's great. Love it.
Yeah.
Good.
Yeah, I think we're done.
You shot everything? Good, you're done. They're ripped apart. Okay.
Our turn?
Thank you. Fellowship,
Yes.
go ahead. Rip everybody apart.
Okay, we're going to start with Offset as well. I mean, some of the points was that one, if you're just going to porn angle, porn is free. Porn is often seen as quite dehumanizing. There are arguments that magazines are a dying breed. For some specific magazines, that might not be the issue, but they need to have a very specific angle and capture quite a specific audience, if so. We also felt it's starting in the wrong place when it comes to handling women's health, especially considering the 3 influencers last year and the major flop that ended up in the news. Even though you might have a much better thing you want to create than they wanted to do, it's how it's perceived and interpreted and then taken. So maybe the starting point should be more from the collective house. And then why porn? Why is porn an angle? Why not have a magazine more about the health initiative, more specifically in that direction? Is it just because porn is sexy? Anybody else want to add?
Yeah, maybe just that it seems like a very niche market. And if you're addressing the porn market, maybe that's not your real audience. So how are you going to shift the focus? How do you know that you target the group you're actually aiming at by launching porn?
Yeah, if it should be porn, it should be porn almost in quotes. It's just an angle of capturing an audience and using that as a tool of teaching. So I see some positive aspects of it, but that's not what we're talking about.
It's a stupid idea.
Why should I buy it? I can Google it. Search it.
Okay, we have a few minutes left. We're gonna go maybe to Fing, unless anyone else had more to add.
No, I can just add that if you actually want to do something good, do something good. Don't do something stupid. And I understand that you want to have like a commercial blast about it, but isn't it better to do an actual good thing than do something that's not gonna get the right audience? I'm done.
And for Feng, you were also a little vague in your descriptions. We also didn't catch the system breaking thing, just that it was there, so we don't really know what you mean by that. If you go with the playground for adults, I mean, how the hell do you make it interesting? You know, well, Norwegians are not the typical social type of hanging out and doing things together. So how do you make that function in our, our normal society? And when it comes to the office part, making them less boring, again, vague. So I wondered like what the angle is. If you're going to go the plant angle, make it more green. It's been done like 200 times already. There's like big companies doing it. If you're going to go to the fun part, how do you manage the fun part with the production part? How do you make it still so that, I mean, we kind of like boring sometimes when it comes to having an office and having production. So how do you make it fun without taking away the professional part? How do you make that blend go in there and not make it just like a colorful playground and then people are going to come back and, what the hell is this?
You can give more money to your employees, and then they will be more happy instead of playing.
Company is never going to go for that. It's a great idea though.
Well, thank you. So I promised also a quick short round because we're coming to an end. And I
That
think
was
this is
fun.
not that was definitely fun, yes, but it was also important that I'd like you to promise each other to keep that. Okay. So promise your fellows here in this group that you will, yes, very good. I like that. That you will keep it up and stay super critical, right? And sometimes it doesn't feel like you're they still love you, but they do. And I also um let's do it. I also love you, but this is only going to be the first little abyss. That was just the first little taste, right? Right. In comparison to the real abyss, this was tiramisu, right? So, so Feng somehow thinks that we can cuddle and giggle our way out of the polar crisis into a systems change. That's so utter bullshit. You've already completely lost. Avkled, you put together the most obvious components that you can find around feminine the feminine world. You're so stuck in the current paradigm that you cannot even think 2 millimeters out of it. Forget about it, really. And it doesn't scale at all. House, come on, seriously. And fellowship, what the heck is that, right? One of the richest countries in the world, and you're trying to move one city to regeneration, while all of the all of the chaos that will ensue through the climate chaos will hit the other 80% of the planet. You're actually helping the fuck up, right? If you do that. So you're on the wrong track, dude. Okay, so I can give you an hour of this if you like for each of you. Okay. Um, but 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 I love you all, just to be clear, right? But this is how we have to look at these things because you don't want to stay on the surface, right? You actually want to change something. I know that. So change starts by doing some actual thinking, by really understanding what you mean when you put a word out there. Every word represents a full concept. Have you understood that concept? Have you? Really? Right? You couldn't explain to me what tiramisu is. Fuck's sakes. How can you explain to me what love is, or systems, or economy, or something like that? Right? You have to go down to the first principles to really, really understand the fundamentals of the things and how the first principles work together in generator functions that then create the emergent properties that are the system that we're dealing with. Unless you really fully understand your concepts that you're throwing around, you stand no chance to change anything. Okay? So you have to get out of simulation of thinking and out of word dispenser mode into real thinking, into creating your own words and concepts that describe what you see. This is why we're dreaming. This is why we're doing the dreaming exercise. And I really look forward to exploring your dreams tomorrow with all the love we have. Right? So the opposite of what's how we're ending this session. All right. So the rest of the day is on you to really explore your dreams beautifully. Okay. Go really crazy.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Thanks.
Thank you.
See you.
This was fun.
Yeah.
Yes.
This was super fun.
See you tomorrow morning.
Thank you, Thomas. See you
Thank
tomorrow.
you. See you tomorrow.
Bye.
Ciao.